So this morning we are focused on the global food system, resources, energy, and climate. And I'm going to start us off with a quote from David Porton. David is one of the founders of Yes Magazine, and also he was an active participant in creating the Earth Charter back in the late 90s. The organizing principle of life is partnership, not domination. Indeed, partnership is one of life's imperatives. The individual cell or multicellular organism can no more exist without the larger community of life than the community of life can exist without the individuals it comprises. Life is a process of mutual empowerment, enhanced by balanced growth and diversification. It is therefore can be understood only in terms of communities of relationship. The more complex, diverse, coherent the relationships internal to a living system, the greater the potential of the system and each of its component members. Relationship. And here we're talking pretty big when we're getting into the global food system. What I'd like to do is for each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and they'll spend 3 to 5 minutes talking about a particular interest and field that they're working in, and then we'll open it up and have questions, answers, discussion. So, Sailesh, why don't you begin and we'll work back this way.
Hi, yeah, can you all hear me? No. So I'm Sailesh Rao. I'm with a non-profit called Climate Healers. We have been in operation for 7 years, and you realize as you work on climate change that it is all about justice. And climate change is a symptom of the injustices that are prevalent on the planet. And of all the injustices that are prevalent, the injustices in the food system are stark. They just stand out. So we've been working in the forest areas of India, in places where the forest is about to die out. Because India's forest cover used to be 90% 200 years ago, and it is now down to around 7% or less. And the desert that begins in the western part of Africa as the Sahara Desert is continuous and is gone all the way into India. It is now the Thar Desert in India. It has actually become the Gobi Desert in China. And so that arc is the arc of civilization. So civilization has resulted in deserts. So we are working at the edge of the Thar Desert in Rajasthan, where we are trying to prevent it from going all the way to Delhi. And you realize the tentacles of the global food system that is causing that desert to spread. Because in Rajasthan is the largest exporter of mutton to the Middle East. So, and when goats finish with the forest, there's nothing that grows. So they wipe it out. In fact, goats even eat the roots so that nothing can grow from that point on. And the goats get to do that because the cows are finished with whatever was growing on the forest floor. And cows are prevalent in India because we drink a lot of milk in India. We drink a lot of milk and we don't eat the beef. So the cows are living for 20 odd years and they eat up the forest. So you begin to see this connection as to how the food system affects what's going on in the climate.
Hello. My name is Eric Barnhart, and I lead a food recovery organization based here in Tempe, also working in Scottsdale, called Flash Food. I am a recent Arizona State graduate. I finished a master's in engineering this past spring. And my organization is looking specifically at the issues of food insecurity and food waste. In the United States, the National Resource Defense Council estimates that as much as 40% of the food that we produce ends up in the landfill. That is a tremendous number, especially since it already takes into account the work of organizations like food banks to try to rescue some of that food and put it in the hands of individuals in need. That amount of waste also is a huge drain on resources, not just what goes into producing all of that food that ends up never being consumed, but also in terms of the methane gas that food waste then emits. Methane gas, of course, many times more effective than carbon dioxide at trapping heat. And food waste accounts for 16% of all methane emissions in the United States. Now, at the same time, in the U.S., we have a problem with hunger, perhaps sometimes an understated problem. The Census Bureau in 2010 estimated that 1 in 6 American households lack the resources that they needed to put 3 meals on the table each day. And we expect that with the economic recovery as it is, and with cuts recently to government assistance programs, as well as reductions in charitable donations, that those statistics are likely worse. So what we do is we have a mobile application and website that makes it possible to rapidly donate food that is perishable. So you think about the food from catered events. You have 500 people RSVP, 200 show up, you have 300 meals left over. What happens to that food? With our system, people who have that kind of leftover food can let us know that that food is available. We can send individuals, we like to call them flash foodies, who can pick up that food, take it to an organization where it is needed, like a community center, and then deliver that food directly to individuals in need. And all of that is facilitated by a mobile application, by web services, and by text messaging capabilities. And we have this in operation here in Tempe. We have 2 different distinct pods where we receive food from an organization, have dedicated food movers, flash foodies, as well as an organization that receives the food. One is Tempe Community Action Agency, the other is Wesley Community Center in South Central Phoenix. So I suppose I kind of fall into the more local than global aspect of today's panel. Although we do believe at Flash Food that this kind of technology has the potential to be deployed more than just in Phoenix, really throughout the Western world and perhaps in some places in the developing world as well, where you have concentrations of food going to waste that are in close proximity to individuals who are in need.
Hi, I'm Ron Cortez. I'm the founder of morethanfair.org. I make a living roasting coffee from farmers, and I grow it all over the world. This crazy idea started at the point where I was using a lot of fair trade coffee, and I started digging about where fair trade coffee came in, and I found out that there was no way for me to trace an individual pound of coffee back to a grower. That being the case because coffee grows massively, and processing plants are massive, so you cannot isolate 50 pounds of coffee. That is what an average small villager will produce. And so I got to thinking, I should come up with a much better way to tell people this coffee is grown in Kenya, in Tanzania, or in South America somewhere. And so we got together. I started calling people who are growing coffee and say, where is your coffee grown? Find out that none of the guys who were selling me coffee knew where the coffee was grown. Technology has grown quite a bit. I've been in business for 20-some years. And now I can actually pick up the phone and talk to my growers. I am kind of like built for this panel because I'm a local roaster representing global growers. It's a very good thing. And I have how I describe it to my girls that I have a very easy business where I have people growing stuff and I can sell. And so I want to thank you guys for being here. Because I hope you guys have some questions about what it takes, and coffee is a very simple thing, but I'm sure you guys will have some questions about it.
Hello, my name is Chris Franco, and I'm here today with Rio Salado Seed Shed Library. There are 2 main concepts to our organization. The first is sharing seeds and seed education. One of the ways that we promote sharing those seeds is by creating seed libraries. And a seed library is a place you come to check out seeds, much like you check out books at the library. Except we ask that you learn how to garden these seeds and how to save the seeds of the plants that you've chosen. We assume that you will fail at first, so no pressure. But once you are successful, we ask that you donate some of those seeds back to the library so that that cycle of seed sharing can continue in our community. As far as seed education goes, we teach seed-saving classes, so we just don't, leave you hanging dry. We have a demonstration garden at Mesa Urban Garden. We host and participate in seed swaps, and we have a booth here today, out in the break. The second main concept of the organization is to be developing our seed shed. And so an ultimate goal is to be growing and sharing seeds that are desert adapted and even more specifically urban phoenix adapted. And one of the ways we do this is by honoring the existing bioregional culture. So an example of that is by sharing the seeds that are important to Native Americans and Native Mexicans of the Sonoran Desert. And another example of this is by teaching wild harvesting and processing techniques. Our website is rssl.org. On the website there are seed-saving resources such as videos, websites, book recommendations, and so on. And like I said, we have a booth here for more information.
Hi, my name's JD, and I'm a co-founder of Recycled City. Recycled City is converting food deserts in Phoenix into farmland. We provide equipment needed to residential and commercial customers for recycling their food waste and other compostables, turning old food into newer, healthier food. Currently, globally, more soil is eroded each year than created, and this is called peak soil. Farming practices cause a significant amount of the soil erosion, and paradoxically, local and organic foods continue to gain popularity and market share, yet local and organic foods depend on the soil more than conventional agriculture. So we're losing soil, but we want food that's grown depending on the soil. So in this country, 40% of all the food that's produced is never eaten. It's wasted, it goes to a landfill or an incinerator, and 95% of that waste is just that it ends up in the landfill or incinerator. So it's like we are depleting and eroding soil to grow food for a landfill while demanding more local and organic food. So at Recycled City, we are working hard to help people recycle their food waste to create more soil for more local and organic farms in food deserts, where fresh food and jobs are hard to find.
All right, thank you very much, panelists. Let us open it up to questions from the audience or from panelists if they have questions of each other. Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Richmond. You're talking about the fair trade process and the lack of kind of transparency, I guess, for what you would call it. So how specifically do you ensure that the coffee is being, I don't know, or treated fairly? Like, do you go and visit the people, or how does that process work?
Yes, I do. That's the fun part. Going and visiting friends is always good. I only deal with people that own land or have control of the land, and they are involved directly in the processing and exporting of the goods into my warehouse. So there's no intermediary. The people that buy coffee from us could actually reach that person by phone, by email, and they can probably find them on Google Earth. So you can be the witness. You can actually see that you could actually go and visit them too. They're very public. None of the guys is never. That's the only thing that will keep me from doing business with one of us. Like, I don't want to get any press or any communication from consumers, because that's why we do need to get in front of the consumer. That good?
Yeah.
Just the last part is your symbol for your beard is these high towers, recycling. That's and I recently read something about elevated
Vertical farming.
vertical farming. Yeah, is that part of what you guys are pioneering about?
Yeah, we would love to see vertical farms. We don't have resources or capital to build vertical farms. So we're starting with abandoned residential properties in the food desert in Phoenix, converting the land into farmland by collecting compostables and breaking them down and remediating the soil.
I was wondering about parking structures. When they get old and maybe the neighborhoods, change and the parking isn't as required in some neighborhoods, that they could be turned into, especially in Arizona. It's just something that immediately flashed on me, that especially that song, you remember, you put up a parking lot, you're disappearing the land, and now, we can thank those parking lots by converting them into useful farming.
Joni Mitchell comes into the
Rescue.
yes.
I have maybe three that I want to ask you here, possibly there are other campuses that have been doing that. I saw a special on CNBC some time ago that students out of, I think it was the University of North Carolina, and I think also in the University of Kentucky in Lexington, that were doing the same sort of model that you're, and they were also trying to replicate it to other universities. And it might be advantageous for you to hook up with them and to,
Yeah, I believe the organization you're talking about is called Food Recovery Network.
right.
Yeah, they came out of the University of Maryland, and they're now at 26 campuses in the U.S. And so what they're working at specifically is connecting, and I think this is fabulous.
That's another organization. That's,
Yeah, if you would, please.
by the way, that's another organization out of College Park, Maryland, which is also into developing food resources in the ocean, because they have the largest school of oceanographic research at University of Maryland. But I was thinking, tying in with what you're developing with that, trying to recover the media and so forth, would be probably talking to Dr. Outby in the county, because he's proposed something here with a trend, this growing trend moving towards the desert scape because of we're eating up, or at least our livestock is eating up vegetation. And I mean, this is going to have a severe impact on our global climate change, global warming issue, because obviously we're going to have less oxygen produced as everything from the Brazilian forest gets cut down to this increased desert around the world. It's having an impact on it all. And perhaps there's a way to suggest a solution that can move towards reducing reliance on livestock and not spawning more livestock and growing more in vegetation and relying more on vegetation instead for food. That
Absolutely.
sound like a good fit.
Yeah.
And then also the fellow in the middle, sorry, I'm going to, I had all these questions flashing off and just was the
Ron.
yeah. Do you do something more than just coffee?
Yes. Simply, what do you mean? Do I do something?
With growers of coffee?
Yes, only with growers.
Okay, but I mean, do you work with teas and other things?
No, just coffee.
Just coffee, yes. Would you be open to working with other?
As long as they fit the model, as long as I can fit a grower, so listen, I'm a grower, I control my own land, I dictate what trees I grow, and he brings it to the United States, yeah, we're more than welcome.
Silas, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just thought I'd address that, the origin of the food. If you think about what he is trying to do is to trace the origin of the food, so the consumer knows exactly where the food came from. If we had a similar system, for instance, for mutton, for instance, right? People in the Middle East would know that their demand for mutton, they know that it's not being grown around them because it's the desert. But their demand for mutton is creating more deserts in India. They didn't know that. If they knew that, would they eat the mutton? You know? So there are all these things that we do that we are unaware of things. For instance, growing beef requires a lot of resources. We know that now. And to me, that is a lot of food waste. It's already built into the system. In terms of energy, to produce a pound of beef, you know, the amount of energy that's in a pound of beef, we need 60 times as much plant-based input to that cow for the meat we produce. So that's 59 times, you know, all the food that we eat, 59 times of that is being thrown away. So there's a huge waste there that we're not aware of because we haven't connected it together.
I don't want to dominate the question. The panel.
Wait, do you have a response as well?
Yes, just real quick.
Yeah, please.
So just a quick word on food recovery and food recovery organizations. I think it's very important that we don't look at food recovery as a competition. I think that when we look at these kinds of really complex situations, that we sell ourselves short if we think there's one silver bullet that's going to address the whole issue. And so as far as the existence of food recovery organizations, I think we are in a very, very exciting beginning of a food recovery movement in the United States, where we have a lot of different organizations looking at a lot of different ways to recover food. Some that look at food specifically on college campuses, some that look at food that is perishable. So, you know, there's organizations like DC Kitchen that look specifically at food coming out of farms. And the reality is that the waste is just there throughout the entire system. That 40% figure is recent. And so I think there is a lot of opportunity for synergistic work in this space.
Well, do you have another?
Curious about India. What do they do with the beef, with the cows?
So in India, India is the largest producer of milk on the planet. But India we hardly eat any beef. So the cows are living for 20 years. So whereas cows here, even dairy producing cows, don't live for more than 5 years. So they're ruthlessly chopped up in hamburgers in this country. But in India, they live for 20 years, which means they're eating up the forests. Right? So the population of cows in India is huge. We have 1.3 billion heads of cattle in India. So it goes to show that, you know, even though we think we are doing the right thing by not eating the cow and treating the cow as sacred, we're actually doing a lot of bad things around that. The deer is dying because there is no food for the deer. When the deer dies, the tiger dies because there is no food for the tiger. The tiger eats cattle, the tiger is hunted down and killed by the people. So this vicious cycle that happens, and that depends a lot on our food consumption, exactly what we consume.
Well, my question is, what happens to all the cows?
Right.
They die of old age.
They die of old age right now. Okay,
What happens with them?
but now India has become the largest exporter of beef on the planet. So they have realized that you have to kill them. They're exporting them because they don't consume
It's like
them.
aged wine. This is an aged beef.
Exactly. But ultimately it comes down to, you know, the people who started, you know, if you look at the consumption of milk and cheese and dairy, that's where it began. Okay? This is why I tell people, if you look at the cruelest system on the planet, it's actually the dairy industry. If you want to look at the system with the most impact on the climate, you're looking at the dairy industry, not the big industries. The dairy industry first and foremost. Because once you accept dairy as a valid food, you will accept beef as a valid food, and the whole thing spreads. Okay? And the destruction that's happening will happen. This is why we advocate veganism. If you want to do one thing that will support the planet the best in terms of climate change, go vegan. Nothing will come even close to it.
And I'm still about the recycling of the beef. I mean, I'm really curious. What happens? Do you have any idea? Like, what percent of the cows that die?
Right.
What happens to them?
See, when they die of old age, they are not edible. Okay, and so their skin gets used for the leather industry. So there's a huge leather production that's going on in India. India is, I think, the largest producer of that. Huh?
Their meat is not used for anything.
Though that meat is not being used for anything, but nowadays the male calves and young cows are being killed and being used for beef for the export industry.
Okay, we have a question in the back.
Well, super cool mobile app. I like the concept idea. It's great. I hope it takes off. And I mean, everybody could use that in every city that they live in. And big fan of Cortez coffee. I've known about that for a long time. Great coffee. And I'm sure all of you guys are adding a lot of value. My question is where and what are the details behind that figure of 40% food ends up in landfills? I mean, where did you get that research?
You want to talk about this? You can go ahead. So that figure comes from the National Resource Defense Council. So it's not full 40% that ends up in the landfill.
Okay.
There's a really great study. You can find it online. It's called From Farm to Food to Fork. Farm to Fork to Landfill. Farm to Fork to Landfill is the name of the study from the National Resource Defense Council. Came out in August of last year. So that 40% breaks down into chunks based on the value stream of the time that the food is planted to where it finally ends up on your plate. So the first half of that 40% actually never makes it out of the field. We have very high aesthetic cues that we look for in our food, and in the US, it's very difficult to sell something that has a cosmetic blemish on it. So in many cases, that food will just be plowed under, left in the field. Another countervailing pressure on harvesting food is food prices, especially with the kind of subsidy scheme that we have in the United States. Whether you agree or disagree with whether or not food should be subsidized, the reality is that it does create incentive in many cases to leave that food in the field because it is more expensive to harvest it than you could ever hope to recoup from those costs. So that's half of it that goes to waste right there. Then another substantial percentage of those losses come from transportation. The fact that you're growing the food in one part of the world and then selling it in another market has a whole host of confounding factors. Sometimes the temperatures get wonky and so you end up with food that spoils that way. In many cases, if you're picking food so that it's available and ready to eat a week away, you have to pick it when it's not ripe, and so that will oftentimes also contribute to spoilage, as well as to less nutritious, less delicious food. And then the final piece there comes at the consumer level. Maybe that's the last, of that 40%, it's the last 10 or 15%, and that is where we are focused. And so that's food that is prepared, that is thrown away. That's also portion sizes in restaurants. And finally, it's food that we throw away because we think it's expired when probably it isn't. There's a lot of education that we probably need to get better at when it comes to sell-by dates versus best-by dates, things like that. And the reality is that if you're in the grocery store and you see something that looks like it's going to expire in a week, you're probably not going to buy it. The grocery store knows that, and so that also becomes waste at that point.
Yes.
I just quickly for the Indian gentleman on the left, and then a question for the two on the right. So I'll ask them together. One is Yes Magazine. What niche did it fit? How did you get involved with that? And what challenges particularly did you have in distribution or reader interest over the ensuing years?
I think you're referring to David Corton, and I'm not David Corton, but
No.
yeah.
That was a quote I read from David Porter at the beginning of our session. And he's not participating today.
With India, though, I wanted to ask a follow-up. I apologize for that. Which is veganism in India and the state of that. If you can follow up, is India becoming more vegan or actually less vegan? That's my question for you. And then for the two on the right, the young lady and the young gentleman, do you have internships for people to come and participate in the lab work, to come and participate in the second farm? How are those internships going for young people who have those interests? Thank you.
So, the question of India. India has the largest population of vegetarians, lacto-vegetarians on the planet. There are about 600 million lacto-vegetarians, but they drink a lot of milk. And India's consumption of meat per capita is around 8 pounds per year per person, compared to 270 pounds per person per year in the US. So, yeah, it is increasing. It used to be 6 pounds and now it's 8 pounds. So it is increasing because people are feeling more prosperous and they are eating more This is what happens. They eat more wheat, or they eat more meat, and they feel prosperous. So it comes down to the value system and how we value things. I was in India once when India had a bumper crop of potatoes. There was so much potatoes that the farmers were all depressed because they had grown too many potatoes. The price of potatoes plummeted. So the farmers were dumping the potatoes on the side of the road because they couldn't make any money off of it. So we have created a system where we value scarcity, not abundance. You know, fundamentally that's what we value scarcity. So we have to really look at the whole system and understand these ramifications of what we do.
I have a question on internships.
Yes, there is room available for an intern or for an apprentice. I've never had anyone ask before, but if someone wanted to come in, they would learn all aspects of running a small grassroots volunteer organization, not just specifically the seed saving or the wild harvesting.
Currently, we don't have any interns. There's a lot of internship possibilities, and I've contacted Sarah at the school sustainability, their internship coordinator, and we're working on developing a program that would be acceptable for an intern.
Great, thank you. Other questions? In the back. Could you wait for the microphone comes to you?
So I was here last year and there was another representative from the organization and she talked about some of the hesitancy on part of local restaurants to donate food or food that is going to waste. And I was just going to see what development has there been over the past year for flash food and engaging local restaurants or other community members.
Yes, so a year ago at this time, we were not actively donating any food, and it is true one of the major challenges for us was being able to get those first adopters. Unfortunately, the society that we live in is highly litigious, and folks are generally concerned about whether or not food that they donate might end up making somebody sick and resulting in a lawsuit for them. In fact, some businesses that we've approached have said, you know what, we've been burned too many times working with other organizations, we just don't want to have any harm. In the United States, there are some protections available. There was an act passed through Congress in 1996 called the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act, which provides relief of what is the word? It provides protections for organizations that donate food in good faith, that food is safe to eat. And where that really gets tricky in a trial is the good faith part. What does it mean to donate food in good faith? And so for our organization, we've adopted fairly stringent food recovery policies to make sure that that food is truly in good faith and that there's fully mitigated the risk there of a tainted food donation. So we do things like when we pick the food up, we take the temperature to make sure that it is within food safe temperatures. Only people with food handlers cards move our food. We temp the food again before we make the final donation to the end consumer. And so in those ways, we try to mitigate those steps. Now, as far as being able to get the first early adopter, that was just a happy confluence of someone being in the right place at the right time to say yes to us. Somebody who was very concerned about sustainability, who had actually tried to work with other food recovery organizations in the past, but had been turned down because of the volumes of food that they had and the fact that the food was prepared. And so they reached out to us and said, hey, could you work with us? And we said, yeah, absolutely. And so that really gave us a good foot in the door to start really developing the model, proving it out, and then have something to show other organizations, hey, look at what they're doing, look at what we're doing for them, and here's how well it's working.
Great. Yes. Wait for the mic.
Yeah, I had a question for the seed share library. Would you feel comfortable speaking on why seed diversity is important and why in the current context with like monocultural foods and how that's affecting the environment.
Okay, well, that's a large question. I'll address what got me interested in seed saving. It has to do with my personal culture, being of Native American and Native Mexican background, seeing the loss in the knowledge of how to do desert gardening and farming, the loss of our own seeds, and wanting to save that heritage and also share it with the other people here in the desert. But as I got involved, I saw the other concerns with the market, valuing seeds that were of a monoculture that, stayed fresh or on the shelf for a long period of time with, little interest as to the taste or as to how well they actually grew on the plant and such. So as you can see in our culture, most people don't know how to save seeds, and most people don't even know how to garden. And so an aspect of rescuing our seed diversity is reteaching those skills, those basic skills of the gardening and the seed saving. And once people have that, then their personal interests will lead them. What are their favorite foods? And they'll become a steward of beans or a steward of tomatoes, or perhaps they'll become interested in whatever their culture was and start looking for seeds, of from Ukraine or from Africa, and then also as we're in the desert, we have a more difficult growing environment, and so the more seeds that we grow here in the desert, each generation becomes more adapted to a desert environment, and as the climate changes, that might actually be a very important source of resources for the future.
Yes.
Hi, so one thing I'm really intrigued by listening to your panel is the role that you all see, this is a general question for the panelists, how you see technology as a way of aiding your mission in terms of not only creating communities, but expanding your community too. The idea of using social media or even Google Maps to keep accountability, transparency, and communication open seems really important. So how do you all see these new emerging technologies, especially globalizing technologies, not as something negative, but something that can actually aid you in your causes?
Who would like to start?
Since I have a microphone. I think it's great. It makes things very easy. I love it. Without technology, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. Coffee is such a big business, is such a greedy commodity. I was battling an uphill battle. I mean, how can one single guy can go against a whole industry that is governed by the New York Exchange? Technology, education. I can actually talk to someone on the field. Say, how's it going? How much rain we're getting? Oh, great. How's the flowers smelling? Can we make tea out of the flowers? That's how it works. Technology is the only thing we have to educate people massively.
10 years ago, the kind of food recovery model that we're targeting was very, very difficult. The fact that so many of us now walk around with a computer in our pocket makes this so much easier to coordinate this kind of rapid food recovery. And I think the social media piece is also really critical. I think I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see the beginning of a real food recovery movement in the United States, and I think social media plays a really big factor in that. Certainly for us, we've targeted some of those social media outlets as ways to create value for food businesses that are donating. Aside from the fact that they're doing something good, and aside from the fact that there's a tax deduction that they can take advantage of, we really want to convey to food businesses that it's in their interest to participate because it will help their bottom line, right? And so the social media aspects of that are things like helping those businesses advertise successfully to their consumers that they are socially and environmentally conscious, that with today's generation, those kinds of features, like think about like Tom's, those kinds of businesses, that really does provide value for those organizations.
Technology is going to be very crucial in dealing with even climate change. If you look at, for instance, awareness, just raising awareness about climate change, there is now a website called globalforestwatch.org where you go and see what part of the forest got killed in the last 6 months or last 2 months. You can actually see it. And, so now we know that 20.6 million hectares was lost in 2012. Because previously you had to wait for someone to tell us. Now it is there. Now you can see. Number one. Number two, climate is changing everywhere. So in order to grow food in a given place, you need technology. So there was one person who was missing on the panel as an empty chair here for Deborah Emanuel. And Deborah, for some reason, she didn't even know that this was happening. So she's still sitting in Sedona. And she works on greenhouses and how to use greenhouses to grow food anywhere and everywhere, so that you can control the temperature inside and then you can create growing conditions year round. And that is going to become crucial in the desert if you want to regenerate the greenery of the desert. Because this wasn't the desert before. The Sahara wasn't the Sahara 5,000 years ago. The Thar Desert wasn't the Thar Desert like 1,000 years ago. I mean, it just happened because of what we were doing. Human activity that caused the desert to happen. So we can actually reclaim the desert. We can bring vegetation back in the desert. We can sequester carbon in the desert. But we need technology.
The primary way our organization uses technology is our website, and even though it's a very basic technology, the way it's been very useful for us is that on there we link to high-quality YouTube videos. We put respected seed-saving website links. We have the recommended books on there, again, that are the books that are well respected in the seed-saving community. So we've done all that homework for you and pre-selected the ways to advance your education on seeds. And it's like a one-stop shop. All you need is the website, and then boom, you can get all this information. I'll say one of the downsides of technology, though, concerning our organization, is that most people usually don't learn by a video, watching a video, or reading a book. They need the hands-on. So that's why, one of our main things is teaching the in-person seed-saving classes. And I found that those have been the most important to our organization.
For Recycled City, social media is going to be a big part. We think that customers want to see how much farmland that they're building when they're composting. So we weigh the compost bin when we pick it up and convert it into how many garden beds or farmland that you are creating. Getting people aware that a project like this is going on social media is a great way to do it. Before it would be knocking doors, and so. Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Yes. Wait, the microphone.
When you were talking, is this on? I don't think it's on. There. No, technology is coming live. You touched earlier on basically, I forget now the words you used, but touched on supply and demand in the system. It's so interesting. I mean, we can actually just do the reverse of that, is go to where the demand is for the hunger, for the people in the world and hungry, and just find a way to supply. And so it's just the way we look at that. It's very interesting. But so the social media and all our way of expressing that, really, that's the heart of the matter, is to change that way of thinking instead of the profit thinking, or whichever way the advertising world has trained all of us to go to where the profit is. The other question is about seeds, and actually this is continuation of the supply and demand question of Monsanto's involvement and other companies that take a predatory view, not only humanity, but of the earth itself, that involves all of this discussion, especially on the seeds. I'm curious about Monsanto's effect on what you do, and how you do that. The third question I have is about coffee. Coffee being, I have a brother who is a roaster like yourself. So it's something that is really powerful in this world, because coffee has been used and by everyone in the world for a certain reason, right? To give you, I wonder has there ever been any study on consciousness around coffee? Consciousness around coffee, like organic farming. The essence of coffee does something obviously to the mind and to the attitude of people, and some people consider it a drug, as actually all food is, in a way, a drug, a natural drug. But specifically coffee is a pretty powerful drug that's being used, and I think the roasting of it is the point of changing the quality, and you can probably change the quality of in various different ways, like medical marijuana is, there's many different applications and discoveries around that, how that's to be really used as medicine. So I'm wondering, is this being done in the world of coffee so that it actually can be used in somehow serving humanity in a good way, instead of just creating acts or driving people beyond their limits?
I'll say I'm not a doctor, first of all. It is probably mild psychotropic. Coffee does get you a perk. It is an upper. It gets you wired. My uncle is a psychiatrist, who told me that the best thing about coffee is to get you off the couch and get you to exercise and motivate you to go after a full day. So I do believe in that. On the other hand, the medical applications of coffee and enemas, I mean, it sounds a little bit gross, but it does help quite a bit. And antioxidants. Fresh coffee has an enormous amount of antioxidants. However, as your brother would say, it's very hard to find fresh coffee, because being a commodity is treated as such. It's always mass produced. It's a product that is everywhere, and that's why people don't take it. So I don't think we have the capacity to roast coffee enough to match the consumption. So coffee is intriguing. Is intriguing. It's here to stay. It's part of humanity. I say how many revolutions have started because of a cup of coffee, or because it started in a coffee house. So it's been there for ages. I use coffee as a social thing. It gets people to talk, one. It gets people to grow as business, as education also. And it's just a great combination. I think coffee is a good thing. I thought about the panels a
differentiation between the hurt and consciousness. Is there some awareness being in the world of coffee around that? Because humanity is going through it, and all of us here is about bettering humanity. Totally being concerned with Gaia as a whole world, about food production, distribution, all of that. And coffee has taken a very different section in the world, and I alluded to the fact that it is a drug. Very potent.
Can you speak up?
It's the difference between perk, getting perk from coffee, which is just a jolt, like some people use whiskey or whatever, I don't know. But there is, I think, there's more to coffee because, of course, it is the it's an antioxidant. Correct. So it's got a lot of that property. So there's a lot of studies have been done about the plus and minus effect on the body. But I'm saying it's also on the mind and consciousness, which is really the one. It's beyond the mind.
I'm sure I have archives of studies and things about the properties of coffee and the effect on the human mind. I'm sure I have them somewhere. I tell you, it works for me. Take it for what it is. In the morning, I'm not the same person after I have the second or third cup of coffee. I become thinking a little bit more clearly. So it has to work at a certain level. I will get you that. I will send you some of the studies I have archived if you don't mind. You really want to read about it. There's always many different schools about it. I don't have a specific quote, but this guy did this study and it got people to transcend mentally. Perhaps. I think the coffee is something that humans enjoy quite well. It has been proven. We do like coffee, and it's not because of the sweets, it's the effect that it does on us. So perhaps it is a step in that direction.
There was a question about Monsanto and how it's affecting
sorry, about Monsanto and seeds. Coffee does not get controlled by Monsanto. The seeds of coffee are controlled by mini Monsanto. Every local government of any growing country in the world controls the seeds that the farmers use. And they go for quality, for quantity, not for quality. Because if they get the money on taxes and export taxes mainly. So there is no need for Monsanto to have the hands on coffee because every country has a mini version of it.
From what I've seen, the people who are attracted to our organization are already educated on Monsanto, and so I find that they're coming because they're worried about the future and they want that hard skill of saving the seeds. And I would say the second largest group that's attracted to our organization is gardeners, and this may sound contradictory, but I found that most gardeners actually aren't educated on Monsanto. Talking about Monsanto is not actually a major aspect of the seed library of this organization, and that's because we feel like there's GMO-free Arizona, there's other groups that are focusing on the Monsanto education, and we want to focus on the actual seed saving and seed sharing. We find what strongly attracts people is the indigenous education. We have seeds from chapalote corn, and chapalote corn is the longest known cultivated variety of corn. And by that I mean these corn seeds can be traced back 4,000 years. And so people are just fascinated by that kind of information, that by having access to seeds that have been around for 4,000 years, and we find that they're drawn to that energy of stewarding these heritage varieties. And so that deals with the Monsanto issue without even directly having to speak about Monsanto.
Yeah, I was just going to mention
we are getting close to the end of our time, so.
In regards to the coordination,
Hold the mic right to you.
I have a really quick question for Recycle City.
We've got a question right here, so.
I'm sorry, he was just struggling. I thought I just put it in there.
Go ahead, Kevin.
right, I can get with you on educating you a little bit more on that. I was practicing clinical nutritionist for 25 years, probably fully in what caffeine is as far as it being a third class of stimulus and beans, and what they essentially do, they're phony transmitter substances. There are medicinal benefits to coffee as far as you mentioned about antioxidants, and as far as tannins and phytochemicals and so forth. We'll discuss that at length. But on regards to the seeds, whether these multinational corporations such as Monsanto, DuPont, and others that sell craft foods and everything else that's out there, Kroger and whatnot, and people are buying this from their shelves. They actually have ownership of a lot of seeds, including 90% of soybeans and something like 80% of corn and stuff like that sold in the U.S. So it's kind of overwhelming these commodities that are sold. The other thing is there a way that we can coordinate? Because I'm sure there's disparity in what is recovered in food, as well as rebuilding this food system in the city with the greenhouses, and along with purchasing the seed that we know is GMO free. That we could develop something coordinated together that could be advantageous for the benefit of the community, particularly in this depressed area, which has the 4th highest per capita homeless population, and as well the 4th highest per capita and of the 5th largest city in the U.S. is the 4th highest foreclosure rate. So there are a lot of dirt, blowing dirt, lands and things like that that could be probably farmed.
One of the beauties of local to global justice is the diversity of people who come. And speaking to Kevin's question, this is a real opportunity to network. So please listen to what people are saying, go up to them, exchange contact information, and really share, because there are a lot of wonderful initiatives that are going on in the valley, and we don't always know about each other or what we're doing. So let's move to.
I had a few questions for the council panel. Starting with the recycled food, I like the idea of taking the food. Is this working? Okay. I like the idea that you're taking food that's still good and giving it to other people, but I do get concerned about the like eating leftovers idea of it is what it brings to me. So I'm wondering about the technologies you have to make sure that food's not going bad and people aren't getting sick from it. And so that's a technology question. And with the composting, I have a concern about if it's organic compost or not because of what we put into our food. If you're turning that into compost, it's just going to get recycled back into the food. So I was wondering what kind of compost that was, and yeah, that's it. Oh, and then for the greenhouses you touched on, I'm actually going to start building greenhouses with my dad, and the technology is really good for it. I just worry that they're going to use so much technology that it's not going to, they're going to take the jobs away from people. And I think that agriculture and food and, family dinners is, where families can, have, if a family can have dinner at home and feed and have wine and feed their family, then this world would be a happier place. So I want to just, have that food for thought. These farms are cool, just it wouldn't be cool if they have like machines. Because they're coming with machines that can go down aisles and pick out tomatoes and see when they're ready and harvest them themselves. We don't want to take jobs from people, and we don't want to take jobs from small farmers either.
Yes.
I can do food safety, I think, pretty quickly. So, food safety is all about minimizing bacterial growth. That's really what it comes down to. And so when we look at the food that we accept, it's food that has never been placed in front of individuals, so we wouldn't be like scraping food off of a plate or taking it from a buffet line. Instead, it's food that a restaurant or a caterer might prepare in anticipation of being able to sell that food and then not be able to sell